Welcome to FM Radio, your go-to podcast for everything in the world of funds management. Whether you're an experienced advisor, a seasoned investor, or just starting your journey, we're here to help break down the complexities of funds management, all in a way that makes sense. This week, we're talking about structured giving. It's an area many families, retirees, and business owners are exploring as a way to create positive change and to provide a purpose beyond their work. Recently, Elston's head of Philanthropic Services, Susan Chenoweth, sat down with Robert Cronk from Flipside Circus and Stephanie Blunt from YMCA Queensland, two innovative organisations that are helping to turn young lives around and welcome philanthropists large and small who want to play a role, connect to a meaningful cause and give back to the community. Here's where we join the conversation.
So what do you both think are those really fundamental building blocks for a great start in life and a successful life for a young person? And how do you cultivate that?
One of the things I hear Robert talking about there is a sense of mastery, and that, as you were saying, confidence, a belief in myself that I can tackle something that's really difficult and I will get there. And I'm sure many young people would arrive at Circus and they don't have that self-belief that they can do hard things or that they are capable and they can overcome.
Or that they've been told they can't.
Yes,
over
absolutely.
and over again, or shown that they can't over and over again.
And children internalise those messages, and hold that as part of their personality, So changing someone's belief, a child's belief from I can't to I can.
There can be a lot of negativity, can't there?
100%, yes.
Problem that needs fixing rather than strengths that need to be built upon.
Yeah.
And we talk
idea of worthiness. As well. Yeah.
I think we talk a lot about resilience and emotional resilience, and there is a thing about, it's hard work to master a trick. You've got to build the strength to be able to do it. You've got to build the flexibility. Then you've got to actually master it. You've probably got to work with other people. There are a lot of setbacks on the way, but if you keep coming back and master that trick, that kind of creates the sort of pathways around resilience and emotional stamina and getting used to coming back and trying again and taking a setback as a setback, not as a end of the road kind of thing.
And we hear a lot, certainly in philanthropy, when some of my clients who love to give to support young people, we hear a lot about that growth mindset being really the key to many things, and that sort of sounds like what we're talking about here.
Yes, absolutely. Even developing that growth mindset and understanding for me as a person, I can continue to shift on this journey can be a really big deal, and I think that is a lot of the work that we're doing in school when young people arrive with us, and even the stamina for learning. And that's something that I hear you talking about. The young people are developing stamina through, coming back, trying again, persistence, those sorts of things, really important skills for life. Yeah. And I believe that's why you would see some of those outcomes as well, where they're more engaged in school and more determined probably to finish, or, as you identified, Robert, changing schools at times so that they can achieve their goals, because, you just see them developing that skill set that's really crucial for success in life. Yeah. And ultimately that's what we're doing in school. Sometimes we do get caught up with those immediate outcomes around education certificates or vocational certificates and the numbers that are passing and the grades they're getting, the entry-level points and those sorts of things. But if they're not learning these integral skills for life, things like stamina, a sense of mastery, the skill set that's involved with learning something new, as Robert's describing, then how are they ever going to be successful in life? We want to churn out young people who will go on and face new challenges and actually know what to do with that and have the self-belief and the confidence to be able to overcome that. Those are the real outcomes, from education.
Yeah, and for us, because Flipside there's a lot of strings to our bows. There's a lot of different programs that we run, but for the performance programs, I think what kind of works hand in hand with that is the drive to sort of to give to empower young people to make their voices heard. The training programs teach you a range of skills, but the artistic programs are about giving you a platform to have your say. And there's so few opportunities for young people to actually make their concerns heard, to make adults actually stop and listen. And it's incredibly rewarding for us when we get to do that. When young performers, particularly when they get to talk to young audiences, and you have that peer-to-peer exchange of ideas, and I'm watching my peers tell this story, and that's empowering for me. But also that moment when you see adults go, oh, okay, maybe sometimes I need to shut up and listen instead of telling them what to do all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's all in the delivery, isn't it? Well, we touched earlier on some of the young people who've been through your programs, and I'd love to hear more about that. Are there any stories that stand out where you've seen real change over time? I'm curious, I guess sometimes it's maybe about just catching a young person in the right moment at the right stage and seeing real transformation, but then other times I guess it's just really consistent, steady work over time. How does it actually work in practice?
Absolutely. Look, there are so many stories of young people who have gone on to have amazing, successful careers. I think in a school like the Y schools, many young people are in crisis when you meet them, and all their families are in crisis, and they're essentially at rock bottom, and they're not going to school. They're not engaged in learning. They've lost their confidence and belief.
And it must be very hard if your family's in crisis.
Absolutely.
For you as a young person to be able to disconnect from that for a period of time each day and actually get an education.
It's really not realistic to think that if we think about family breakdown, for example, we know the statistics around divorce are quite high. And we also know that parents are often doing the absolute best that they can. However, you can't change the fact that it rocks a child's world when their parents are separating and their home life is falling apart, and they then show up at school and we go, oh, well, get on with it, go to class now, do your work, and those things. What we know when we take a neuroscience lens, that young person is deep in their survival brain, and that means they're not going to be able to access the best cognitive parts of their brain. They can't make creativity work. They can't make problem-solving work very well when they're stuck in survival. They're making decisions around fight or flight or, and those sorts of things. And what's going to happen, my whole world is breaking apart. And so they just really make it through the day as best they can, and sometimes try and keep their heads down. Some children will say they go off like a flashing red light, and what that looks like is big behaviours, and it looks like noise because their whole world is unsettled and they don't know what to do, and they know they need support and help, but they don't have the words to say that, and they may not even consciously necessarily know that, but they're reaching out in all of these crazy kind of dysfunctional ways at times.
It's uncharted waters for the whole family, let alone the child.
That's right.
And this sort of, I guess what you're really talking about is trauma and stress and anxiety that young people are facing. Would you say there's an increase in rates of that in our society? Is that why our mainstream schooling is just not fitting the bill?
I mean, research certainly indicates that there is an increase. We really don't have great data yet around the impacts of the pandemic, but we can see anecdotally that mental health has gone off, way off the charts really from where it was. As an example, we know that there was a generation who spent, a good 6 months in their bedrooms, and at home, and that in those formative years they've learned socialisation differently. They've learnt that they don't need to go outside of the home. Recently I was talking to a young person who's in the early 20s. They were talking to me about doing an online date, And you can understand in COVID that that's what people were doing, using Zoom or something to be able to catch up. But the fact that we're still doing it now in 2025, so we've normalised that behaviour really of that, an online conversation is the same as a face-to-face conversation. However, of course, it's vastly different and there's a different level of social skills, different kinds of skills, those sorts of things. So these changes we're still really appreciating the depth of. And earlier I was talking about really the need to shift our model of education and the time that will take. It will be 30 years before we understand really the impact that COVID had and we can respond in the system, because those changes take so long to ripple through, and for even understanding what is the change that would be appropriate to respond to this situation.
And I guess that actually highlights the importance of extracurricular supports and
I was going to say
programs.
there's sort of two things that come up out of that for me, and one is the importance of young people's voices. They've experienced it. It's 5 years post-pandemic. It's really interesting starting to see how that influences what they want to say, and that's why it's so important to create that platform. I think the other thing, and I think it's what we probably have a lot in common in this space, is around making that third space. There's home, there's school or work, and then there's the third space. And for a lot of people in general, but particularly a lot of young people, that third space is hard to find at the moment. And if you can create a third space where people feel safe, where they feel valued, listened to, and that they can do something, for us, do something really cool. But just to sort of sidetrack a little bit, the thing I love about Circus is so much of it is based on trust. So, when you're doing a 3 high, you have to trust that the 2 people underneath you have got you. And if it all goes sideways, the 6 people standing around will catch you. It metaphorically becomes an actual thing that those young people have this tribe, these people that they can trust, who they know will literally catch them, but then eventually metaphorically or figuratively will catch them as well. And that's such a powerful outcome, I think, when they know that there's other people who've got their back.
100%. And I had, in the lead up to Changemakers, read a lot about that, but seeing those young people literally falling and having complete trust in their co-performers, it was incredible, and it made it really real. Well, something that really stands out for me is we're talking about this really deep human need for purpose and belonging, and how critical it is for the young people that you're working with. I think it's important to us all, isn't it? One of the things I see so often in my work with donors is that philanthropy and giving can be so much more than just a donation. It actually becomes that donor's purpose, particularly in retirement. And of course, you both must get so much reward from the work that you're doing.
Well, absolutely, yes. It's very rewarding, and I feel that my purpose is to help people heal from traumas of the past, from toxic stress, and to find their potential and to live out their best life. And I wonder if, Robert might also be motivated to help people live their best lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
And help young people to find that within themselves. Sometimes when we're working with young people, we will be asked, if they get a job, is that the outcome? And 100%, we really want them, and I've talked about that to live their best lives, and to find that right outcome and that passion for them as well. But I also am driven to know that the next generation will have a better opportunity, and that we can heal some of this stress and trauma of the past. And I'm sure there'll be many people that, you work with in the giving world who have experienced toxic stress in their own family line and will know that it was on them,
Yes.
as the person today to do things differently.
And I think that's a big driver for many people to give back, and it's around giving other people, communities, environments, the opportunities that perhaps they never had.
Yes.
Or even for many people, I think, who experienced the kindness of others or the generosity of others that made significant change in their life, to hand that down to the next generation and know how transformative a role giving back and the generosity of others can play in someone's life.
Yes, absolutely. And even to know that the investment we make today will ripple out across generations.
A lot of our fundraising is driven by small donors, community donors, and it's amazing how many of those are ex-Flipside students. Some of our most generous small donors are performers who got their start at Flipside, or their families, and for us, this kind of it's always really rewarding to see that the community stays intact. We always talk that no one really ever leaves Flipside, or no one ever really leaves the circus. You just take a break,
Yes,
and you might come back, they do come back. But the community and the kind of the mission sort of outlives any of the people or the personality specifically. And I think there's that buy-in from the community that the mission is worthwhile, that what we're doing actually really does make a difference. We are changing lives, makes people want to give back. Yeah,
of course. And really our Changemaker events that's a really key purpose for us, to be able to shine a light on incredible work that is going on in our community. Lives are being transformed, but unless you are a alumni of Flipside, or you've had exposure, you don't always know about the work that's going on there and how impactful it is, and likewise with Y Schools. So it's great to be able to let as many people know about this kind of thing as possible. And it must be challenging for you because, we've talked about public funding and it can only stretch so far. And for you, some of your programs are around innovation and trialling new things, and you do really rely on additional forms of funding for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. I know in school funding is very limited. One of the things that's different about the Y Schools is that we're driven to invest in the well-being of our staff. And, we really want to make sure that they are also getting this opportunity, to focus on themselves and their own well-being. We know that when we educate them around neuroscience and what's going on with the young people's brains, they also then can implement that into their own life. So in the investment that we make in professional development for our staff also actually ripples out to their well-being and their own understanding of themselves, also their job satisfaction. Dysregulated adult can never help a young person to regulate. We have to regulate ourselves. We don't learn that really in mainstream school. We still hear lots of teachers yelling and, trying to impact how the class is behaving and those sorts of things, So investing in our people is really important for us. That's just one example. As you said, innovation around programs as well, super expensive, and you're looking for money outside of the budget. There's an extra thing that I want to do. I really believe in it. I know it can change lives. Can I please have some money? Yeah. Also, being able to show outcomes and show that what we're doing, we talked about being innovative, being unconventional, being different. People who are giving into this situation want to know that you're working, that this is going to work, that it's successful, so and you know what you're talking about.
So how do you measure your success?
Very creatively, and I will say again, through the power of philanthropy actually has helped to provide, we're very grateful for Hand Heart Pocket and also the Clem Jones Foundation, who have both helped to fund research so that we can capture those figures, we can understand what impact we're having. That in itself it's enormously valuable for us to be able to say what we thought we were doing that was good actually is good and is impactful. And here is the next frontier for us as well, which also reveals itself through the research. So, and we also did co-design and youth consultancy with young people, with staff, So all of those things, none of that would be possible. So really the quality of what we can do, the future pathways of what we can do, understanding our impact, all of those things are enormously impacted by the generosity that we encounter through philanthropy, so it's so important for us.
Yeah, I was going to say similarly, we have not always been, for us it's been a bit of a journey. We've always been really good at just rolling up our sleeves and doing it and not necessarily good about measuring it. So it's been a journey for us and equally supported by philanthropy to actually to measure, to take stock of how programs have delivered, how they've rolled out, the impacts they've had. And that body of evidence, I think, as it builds up, makes it easier too when you're talking to someone about a crazy idea that you think is going to be fantastic and have amazing impact. We don't know how this program is going to roll out exactly yet, but we know that the last 15 programs that were sort of similar have had these kind of impacts. This is what we're striving for. This is the evidence we've based these decisions on. And here's a budget that makes sense.
Yes.
Please trust us.
And I think, well, exactly. And I think trust is a really critical part of all of this, isn't it? And I think today donors are a lot better at recognising partnership and trust with the not-for-profit sector. Of course, a philanthropist can't change the world without incredible not-for-profit partners who are doing the work, who have that really deep understanding of the problem and, want to innovate and create solutions. But I do think philanthropy is a lot better these days at recognising, well, we want to get better, we want to evolve, and ultimately we want to create more impact. So let's provide the funding to allow measurement to happen.
Yep.
Because it's very hard for you to find funding for your own programs, let alone actually measuring the efficacy of them.
Yeah, and I imagine, like us, you guys are ambitious to improve, always improve what you're doing, and the more work you do in the space, the more work you realise needs to be done. So we're always pushing the dollar as far as it'll go, the programs, as far as they will go. So that support makes such a huge difference. I was just going to say on the relationship with philanthropy, I think for us it's kind of embedded in the DNA of the organisation that we try to avoid flying by night. We if we're going to work with the community, we want to try and make sure we visit a community regularly over a period of time. And philanthropy is sort of the same thing. We sort of don't want to. We're much more interested in building a relationship that can grow over time, and where we engage and there's mutual benefit there, and then that we can actually see the impact of that support over a long period of time. And we've been lucky. A couple of key relationships for us have been like that, which have created this great template for how that relationship can work.
Well, I can imagine there's not much point in you going out to a community for a single time and not coming back.
No.
You need long-term predictability to be able to run those programs.
It's really interesting with our regional remote programs where we very deliberately try and go as far off the beaten track as possible. The only time we tend to do one-off gigs is the first time. So it's quite hard to explain to a community. Often you're working with a youth worker or a council's sport officer or a PCYC or a school principal, or just someone who's really passionate in the community. So, and they don't quite understand how a circus program coming to town is going to work, so they go, all right, well, we'll just book half a day and see how it goes, and then then you're back next year.
Yes, yes.
But yeah, so that they're the only times we ever do it. Is kind of that first time to start the relationship and get to know each other.
So for a would-be donor who's thinking about funding programs that are designed to empower youth, I'm hearing some key messages around it. It takes time. Trust is important. Continual longer-term funding is really necessary to be able to create sustainable change. And it's about innovation and measuring impact and looking for the solutions that are elusive but are going to move the needle in terms of youth outcomes. Any other tips for a potential donor to this space?
Yes, look, I would say, as you say, it will take some time, and a continual investment would allow us to iterate and discover, in the first instance, it won't be the best. Like if you wanted to hold any sort of event, the first time you have a go, and then you understand, here's what we really need to do to make this thing work, and it will continue to get better. The other thing is it's tempting to just look at the program costs, but those additional costs around that measuring impact element is absolutely critical, even for the person who's giving themselves to be able to say, I really understand the impact that we've been able to make with our contribution because we also, assisted with that, gathering the information that we need for the impact. And the other thing I would say is there's no need to be a stranger. We love partnering and getting visits and doing tours and things with people who, are connected with the organisation through a giving relationship. So, you're very welcome to, come and see what's going on and ask all the questions and meet people and those sorts of things as well.
Yeah. Fantastic.
I think there's definitely, there's this, that person's a wonderful, generous supporter. Let's not bother them with actually, and possibly that works the other way around as well, that, going, they don't want us to interfere, but we would love to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And the more the better.
And of course, for many people who are giving to create change, they care about it. They're very emotionally connected to the cause, so they relish the opportunity. And it's surprising. I know I had the good fortune of being able to come and see both of your areas of work and the places in which you're helping young people change and grow. And it's really surprising. I had no idea there'd be fairy lights and beanbags and all sorts of really unconventional education spaces, kitchens, mechanics, workrooms, where young people are, exploring really different ways of learning and getting out of the situations they're in. So it's really, really nice to be able to see that.
Yes, it's lovely. And we love to have people along to our events so you can see the young people shine. We just did our senior graduation at the convention centre. And so there's, we had 2 students get up and do a speech. And I know, that they are young people who had a lot of difficulty stepping foot onto school the first time they came and, and attending consistently and getting work done and the stamina for learning in the classroom and so many things they've overcome. And to see them standing up there, reflecting on their journey is so powerful. Yeah. And so wonderful, and so many young people with achievements. We had our highest ever level of QCEs, which is the Queensland Certificate of Education, our highest ever vocational education completions. There's some of the outcomes, but we also measure outcomes by improved attendance, by participation, leadership skills. I can hear you also, Robert, talking about those outcomes around mastery, skill sets, confidence, belief, those sorts of things. We collect a lot of wellbeing data so that we can understand those impacts.
It's so related to the individual, isn't it? Measure of success. And one thing that really touched me when I came out to see you out at Y Schools, Stephanie, was you said to me you had a recent visit from a lovely young woman who I think had recently had a baby, and she was doing really well for herself, and you were so proud that you knew that she had the skills and the capability to be a really good mum.
Yes.
And that is an incredibly important role, and maybe one that she would not have had the capacity to do if it hadn't been for your programs.
We certainly would have been really worried, about some of those things that she's experienced in her own life being passed on. And she's continued to stay connected. She helps us now facilitate a young mums group that's, just starting up, and, potentially also will be a young person on the board for us in the future, So it's fantastic to stay connected And, similarly, as I heard you talking about, Robert, that you're always part of our family now, that sense of belonging is so powerful for anyone, for any of us. And we always say to our young people, you'll always be part of the Y family. And we know that sense of belonging and connection is one of the most powerful determinants. And it doesn't matter if it's academic outcomes, future pathways, engagement in class and learning, all of the different things. A sense of belonging is the most powerful.
Yeah, absolutely. And just Susan, to pick up on your question earlier around, what motivates us to do it. I mean, it's definitely listening to you and going, oh yeah, I've had that same experience about those young people who you've had a relationship with over a long period of time. You've seen them come into a program. You've seen them sort of take their first steps. And when you see them doing something that they would never have done the first few times they came into a program, that's what gets you up in the morning.
Yes, that's what it's all about.
Yes, you can power on that for a while. And then you see them leading others as
Yes,
well.
yeah.
Oh, powerful. And, and sharing then. A lot more powerful than any educating we can do is when it comes, from their peers as well. Yeah.
Brilliant. You both work very intensively with young people at a point in their lives, but it must be really rewarding to close that loop and see the outcome of all of your work years later. Have you got some examples of young people that you've worked with and then you've come across them when they're well into their adulthood?
We recently had a visit from a young man who came back to one of our campuses where he had been. He was with us as a senior student in the early days. When he came to us, he was really in a pickle with addiction, and it was difficult to see him clearly, a highly intelligent young man, had left mainstream school. It was impossible for him to continue. And he was getting medical supervision around trying to overcome that addiction. He had made some visits to rehab, and we tried to keep him at school and with us during the day as much as possible because he couldn't be using any substances in those times. And these things that we knew that could change his life, like the belonging, really wanting to transform his belief in himself. He's a very intelligent, skilled, talented young man, sportsman, lots of great things going for him. Family, really tearing their hair out as well, not sure what to do next. And so he finished with us and it was quite uncertain where things would go. And so to see him now, potentially around 5 years later, roughly, come back, healthy, happy, employed, loving life, has found direction. He is volunteering for Rotaract, doing volunteer work overseas, helping other communities. And his purpose of his visit was to come back and said, maybe we can work together because I've got these great things going in the Pacific Islands. And, the power of, it's like a couple of staff came from another campus to say hello because it was really powerful, the powerful of this amazing, healthy, happy adult who said thank you. And I'm so grateful for this place. You never turned me away. You never shut the door on me. And let's do amazing things together, And his own passion for creating change in the world is just palpable and powerful. And you believe him when he says what he's going to do, and the change that he's going to make. So that was a really beautiful moment for so many staff of genuine transformation.
Well, it really brings it back and makes it real, doesn't it? I mean,
it really does.
That's really what it's all about for you. It must be incredibly rewarding when you do get to see the outcomes years later.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for us, there's a couple sort of examples that stick in my head. One is one of our artists who trained with Flipside from when they were tiny, right through, became a professional acrobat, toured the world with companies from Cirque du Soleil to some of the European touring circus companies, and then came home to work as a guest artist with us. And there's this wonderful thing that happens when you've got that artist there going, yep, I've been in your shoes. And, you know, when they say you can pursue this, you really can. Here I am, case in point. But it also kind of, it, as you say, closes the loop in that kind of that thing about our community always coming home, and that those contributions keep coming back.
And I think for our philanthropic clients, the privilege of being able to support that kind of work. I mean, we can donate, but we don't have the skills and the programs at our disposal to be able to create change, and that's the essence of what you're doing. And it's so incredible to hear those stories, but I think for donors, it's so inspiring to be able to connect with the cause and to see and hear firsthand around the kind of outcomes that they can be part of in a small way, in a funding way. Of course, that's a really important resource for you. But I think that's what makes these change maker events so incredibly enjoyable and rewarding for our philanthropic community. Interestingly, I think a lot of the clients that we work with, they'll come to us to seek some help with setting up a giving structure and really starting to get strategic and serious about their giving. But they often really haven't had a lot of exposure to the causes that they care about other than from a personal experience. So the opportunity to actually come to Flipside Circus or come to Y Schools, meet some of the performers or the young people that you're working with, and people like you who are doing this work and can tell these stories, it really brings it alive for them, and I think also provides this amazing sense of connection and purpose for donors. So it's really it's a great opportunity to be able to pull these things together for them and help them to really see what their role could be as a donor, as a change maker themselves, whether they're giving $1,000 or $1 million to a cause. Being connected
as a partner in some of these outcomes.
Yeah, having a role to play. What is their role as a donor? What does that look like? And where are the gaps in funding? You know, it's a nice probably topic of conversation for you to engage in. Not many people probably ask you, like, where are the gaps? What do you need funding for? What is the most pressing need? And so that's really what we always like to explore in our Changemaker forums. Where can philanthropy play a role in creating solutions?
That missing 30% on every project.
Yes, right. You cross your fingers.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. You know, and I think I'm a big believer in the creative pathways as well to help create some transformation in our young people. And those are the things that often aren't well funded. You know, they're the things that sit around the periphery that we're looking for funding for all the time. You know, we have a creative showcase that we do each year. It's something that I'm very involved in because of its connection to wellbeing, and I believe deeply in. And every year, I mean, we haven't done it that many years, but again, I'll be at with the hat open, saying, please, can I pull together enough bits and pieces to make this showcase work? Yeah. We want to have a nice venue. Many of our young people have never been on stage, never been in front of an audience. So to go into a venue, grab the mic, up there, sing a song. We've got musicians who work with them through the year. Again, we've seen some of the most powerful transformations of things that aren't mainstream in terms of our program. It's not part of classwork. Necessarily, it's not going to help them get that educational outcome. This year we had a young lady who came. She's 15 years old, and I didn't know her very well in advance. I knew she'd been at our school about 6 months and was attending and seemed to be going quite well. That was, my background knowledge. I saw her come up on stage to sing a song. The background track started, and her body language, I was immediately afraid. She was all in a ball like this, and she actually had a big heavy jacket on, like hiding. And then her body language, and I thought, oh, Lord, what's about to happen? And then she opened her mouth and this voice came out and she sang an amazing song and owned it, and it was powerful. And as she was getting towards the end, you know, she actually can really sing. I noticed these two people at the back with their phone up and just tears pouring down their cheeks. And she came off stage and they realised that's her parents, and they all had a big hug. And you know, and it was a lovely moment. And she went out to the bathroom, and myself and another worker grabbed her parents and says, everything okay? You guys okay? Because you know, it's lovely for parents to be proud, but this was something else. And they said 6 months ago we couldn't get her out of her bedroom. It was really amazing that we got her down here. And since then, they said, we've never heard her sing. The only time we've heard her sing is she's in her bedroom or in the bathroom, you know, but other than that, she's never sung for us. Not only that, 6 months prior to getting stuck in her bedroom, she tried to take her own life. And so that family has been to rock bottom, and they thought, we're going to lose our girl. And then to see her on stage, the pride in them was phenomenal. The emotion that was pouring out was amazing. To see them, even they, you know, all in the foyer after that, they all hugged and cried. Myself and the other worker hugged and cried as we were there hearing the story from the parent, and she stayed really well engaged. She's actually doing, you know, really that program brought her out of herself, and now we see her doing maths and English and participating in all of the classwork and having a social life at school. So, I mean, she is still very much on her journey. She'll be moving to our senior campus next year, which is phenomenal. But the transformation that we've seen in 1 year to go from I don't want to live anymore to on stage, showing off her amazing strengths of that, you know, naturally given voice that she's got, and carry a tune, phenomenal. You know, her potential is amazing, and it's going to be fantastic to see where she goes next. You know, but that program, I am scrapping for money every year to pull it off, you know. So these are the things that can make a difference. And again, that's small money for that in the big frame of things. So it doesn't matter really what someone gives. As Robert was saying, so many of your donors are the small value donors, but that is equally, you know, as powerful. It can make such a huge difference as well.
What a great story, and what a terrific example of the change that can be created through the innovative work that you're doing at Y Schools and what you're doing at Flipside Circus, Rob. I think this is what's great about Elston's Changemaker Forums. It's having people who want to get involved with structured giving, actually meeting with people like you and hearing these stories. They learn about new causes and innovative programs, and they're inspired by these outcomes, and they see this transformative change that they can be part of too. So thank you so much for coming in today. It's been wonderful.
That's all for this episode of FM Radio. I hope you can join us again soon as we tune into another aspect of funds management that affects you and your clients. FM Radio was recorded at Elston House, and today's guests were Elston's Head of Philanthropic Services, Susan Chenoweth, Robert Cronk from Flipside Circus, and Stephanie Blunt from YMCA Queensland. For more FM radio episodes and full transcripts, visit elston.com.au. And if you'd like to subscribe to our podcast series so you don't miss a thing, you'll find FM radio on your favourite platforms, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts. The information provided in this podcast is general in nature. You must consider your own circumstances prior to making any investment. For more information, go to elston.com.au or speak to your financial advisor. Elston Asset Management is authorised by EP Financial Services, AFSL number 325252.